Welcome to the Femcast. We're more than just a podcast, we are a movement, fueled by the voices, ideas and stories of women from all walks of life. We're here to amplify your voice, empower your ideas and ignite change. This is a platform where your story matters, whether it's celebrating success, overcoming adversity or raising awareness on issues that shape our world. By subscribing, commenting or reviewing, you help us grow our community so we can continue bringing these important conversations to the forefront. Connect with us across social media at the Femcast and be part of a growing community striving for equality. Join our mission, share your story. This is the Femcast, where your voice leads the way. Welcome to this week's episode of the Femcast, the podcast that breaks the silence. Today we discuss the realities of fertility issues and reproductive health. In this episode, I sit down with Helena Tubridy, a former midwife turned fertility expert, coach and therapist, who's been filling prams for over 30 years now, often against the odds. We talk about living well on the fertility journey, navigating the emotional toll of fertility issues, investigations, pregnancy loss and recurrent miscarriage. Issues too often swept under the carpet. We explore hypnotherapy and EDMR and what it really means to optimize fertility. I also share my own journey, my pregnancy losses, and what I do differently if I had the time over again. Plus, we raise an important conversation about workplace awareness, why women and couples deserve to feel safe, supported, and secure in their jobs when speaking about starting a family or undergoing IVF after exhausting every other option. Fertility struggles aren't just personal, they're societal, and it's time we stop treating them like they don't belong in the workplace. This episode is raw, it's real, and a must listen for anyone feeling unseen in their fertility struggles. This is the Femcast.
You're very welcome to the Femcast podcast today, Helena, and I'm delighted to have you on. We've been talking about this forever, and I want you to introduce yourself because obviously I know you very well. Introduce yourself to our listeners and those that are viewing us on YouTube. Who is Helena Tubridy?
Okay, so I come from a midwifery and nursing background a long, long time ago, and people around me were having issues becoming pregnant. And, my midwifery, we were the first group to actually learn about the male reproductive system. And I guess I began to realize that there was a need to help people to optimize fertility, to prepare for pregnancy. And then, of course, I went and did hypnotherapy, which was also psychotherapy, because the emotional toll I found was so huge, undervalued, under-recognized, invisible, taboo. And the issues of pregnancy loss, recurrent miscarriage, stillbirth were just, absolutely swept under the carpet. And the fact that, having fertility treatment doesn't guarantee a happy, healthy pregnancy, that having a baby doesn't guarantee that you'll easily become pregnant or next time, or that IVF fertility treatment will work for you. So the sense of how to live while you're exploring these options, how to mind your mental health, how to make good decisions. So I guess I do a lot of fertility busting, a lot of guidance and support for people. But because I work with EMDR, I work with the trauma, reproductive trauma that is, waiting in a month, every 2 weeks. You're either heading towards a period, hoping that it won't come, or else you're heading towards ovulation and trying to have sex or, to get together, hoping it'll be the month. So the stresses and the pressures are cumulative over time, under-recognized. And I am so glad to be here with you, Anita, because, you've been through so much yourself. You shared so generously, and you really are, shedding light on this subject in a very meaningful way for people that allows them to feel far less alone, to make good decisions and not to be seduced by the snake oil that's out there as well.
Absolutely. I suppose because we have everyday stresses. We have the commute to work. People are back in offices now since COVID, and more companies want people back in the office. I was self-employed when I started my journey. Well, I was employed and then I went self-employed to, I suppose, reduce the stress that was in my life because I had a 2-hour commute every day to work and from work. And I went self-employed to give myself the best chance. Now, sadly, it didn't work for me, but I did give myself the best chance. I tried to reduce that stress, but these stresses are all coming back on couples now. And I suppose back when I was doing it, because I started 20 years ago when I was 30, nobody was talking about it. Nobody was talking about, trying to conceive, miscarriage. I think we were on our 3rd miscarriage before we told anybody. Nobody was talking about fertility visits to hospitals. There weren't as many fertility hospitals. There wasn't as much advertising or media. So it's only in the last, I'd say, less than a decade that you see it now. And it seems to be everywhere, which is good. And couples are talking about it. Is it 1 in 6 is still?
Oh, at least. I think that's
Yeah.
a very conservative estimate. Add to that the issue of endometriosis. They say 1 in 10, but it's obviously far more than that. So many people in my practice are amazed when I suggest they might have investigations. They find that although they've not had symptoms, they've had fertility issues, and then they discover something like stage 4 endometriosis, which is really, really shocking. So I guess I'm all about joining dots. And, I think a really salient point there, Anita, that, originally you used to have to get a doctor's referral to go to a fertility clinic. All the fertility clinics are private. We now have some publicly funded IVF. That's actually an additional strain because you're only really getting 1 session, 1 cycle, should I say. So there's an awful lot riding on that. And
So it's 1 cycle for the
publicly funded.
Public.
And there was nothing. I mean, it's only last year, Anita, that this came in, and it's great, but it is limited, and it actually does add our pressure. There is great scope. I don't think it's been fully used to have, fertility hubs with specialized doctors. They're not using restorative reproductive medicine. They're still keeping it fairly general. I think they're missing an opportunity. But the sense that,
the arms of reproductive medicine.
Oh, yes.
Some may not understand this.
I guess I am all about layering things up, about project managing in a logical way so that you don't jump into the deepest part. I mean, if you wanted, back in the days of Concorde, if you wanted to travel to the States, you could get, a reasonable flight, or you could go Concorde and you get there just the same, hopefully. Now, this is a really bad analogy, but the idea that, IVF is the only silver bullet, it's going to get you pregnant every time, is so far from being true. And I think when people realize that you're talking maybe 27, 28% chance, that the failure rate is massive still, even 45, 46 years after Louise Brown was born, the first IVF baby.
Yes.
So self-funding, dipping into savings, taking on extra shifts, knowing, a client of mine very recently shared with me that, she's very happily had a beautiful second child. And she said the cost, when they looked at it, was at least €80,000. So, the limitations of not being able to perhaps, move from an apartment to a house, not being able, being on a different level, being in debt is very, very tough, usually coming into your 40s. So I think, the hidden cost, I know nobody wants to put a cost on a baby. Nobody wants to say, we have a limit. There is a feeling of relentless, pushing, just do the next test, the next investigation, the next add-on, the next shiny, the sense that this might be the one thing that tips the balance in my favor. So, I was on with Sean Moncrief on News Talk just during the week, and, they had picked up on the fact that Naomi Watts, who's written a book, had said that, she would have eaten her dog's toenails if that would have got her pregnant. She's that desperate. And everybody being absolutely amazed is like, yes, of course, that is not, these are intelligent, highly educated, well-motivated people who do a lot of research. This isn't some superstitious nonsense. The fact is, you would do anything to have your child. It's a biological imperative. And when you see other people who may have partnered up, got together, got married or whatever around the same time as yourself, and they've had one child, they're having a second, they might be going to have a third very effortlessly. You are becoming more isolated. And it's tougher and tougher and tougher when this is so not chosen and not deserved. And, it really, the cumulative effect, I'd say, is massive.
It is very, very lonely. Even though at the time there were a few of us going through it, it's still so lonely. It's lonely in your friend circle that have had kids or that aren't having kids because they chose not to. It's lonely, the blood tests going for them on your own, because you can't be expecting your husband to be getting time off, or your partner, or whatever your circumstances are, if you're on your own, getting time off to go for the internal scans, the blood tests, the how are we doing now, what's the follicles like. So it's all, while there are other people in it, is still so lonely, if that makes sense to anybody out there that doesn't understand it. I suppose it's like childbirth is never the same, or having the child when you come home, or depression, or menopause for people. While the symptoms are there, it's always different for everybody. But the one thing that of all the women I've spoken to is loneliness was a big factor. And like we've spoken about as well, the 2-week wait, that has, so the 2-week wait from ovulation to getting your period is horrendous when you're starting this journey. And then when you start on the IVF roller coaster, that is as bad, because if they've implanted an embryo or they have done IUI, the 2-week wait again is horrendous, because you know it's going to happen. And then I suppose you can't get too excited. I used to have to prepare myself, because I've had multiple miscarriages, prepare myself for the worst, but really hope for the best. And that's
It's a knife edge, isn't it? You're
mind.
balancing on
Yeah.
a knife edge.
And
The uncertainty, humans, we all hate uncertainty. If we were told it's going to be 2 years, you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z, and it's going to cost you whatever, you would do it. The fact is that you're waiting, as I say, 2 weeks to 2 weeks, or into another IVF cycle, and putting so much into it. I didn't really explain, the restorative medical approach, which is, I guess, with IVF, you're getting perhaps however many cycles you have in a year, you might get 2, 3, 4 embryos that can be transferred, that can be, potentially become babies. With the restorative reproductive medicine, you're actually examining both partners of a couple to see if there's any deficits, either in general health or fertility health, that might be, hormonal, or what I might call mechanical, or something like endometriosis, things that can be remediated by medicines or surgery. So optimizing, and that actually gives you 13 chances in a year, because you have 13 periods, 13 ovulations. So even for people who are going on to do IVF, this makes sure that the fertility ducts are in a row, and really does improve the chances. It's logical. Now, it's tedious because you're tracking cycles. And as you said there, Anita, rocking up for your appointments, that there's an awful lot of those, what we call dates with Wanda, which are uncomfortable internal, transvaginal scans. People do them, they never make a fuss. They're not generally that comfortable. There's blood draws, there's waiting on results, there's, you'll get spurious, strange blood results. It's like, what have I done? Have I done something wrong? Everything you do becomes, like these glasses, it's the filter, the lens through which you view the world. Am I doing something wrong? Will this help my fertility? Am I being bad or good? And it's, it's very narrowing. It really does. It's like blinkers. You're afraid to sign up for classes, afraid to go for a promotion, afraid to join a project, afraid to change jobs in case you're pregnant. The wedding that's in Malta. Well, maybe we won't go because I might be pregnant. I might be in the middle of something. So your life's on hold. That pause.
Constantly. I remember that so well. And if I could give one piece of advice, or if just something to think about, is be in the present. Oh my God, I lost so many years. Well, I did it for 17. But so many years of not being present in my mind, my body. Just everything was kicking the can down the road for when I get pregnant, when I come home with the baby, when this happens, when.
And
And
sometimes
never
there's a
been in.
feeling of,
Yeah, you're
beginning
just
of moment.
running all the time. You
And
want to get to
sometimes,
that finish line, which isn't actually a finish line, because then it's the start of, you think it's going to be the start of other things. It's just getting to that line.
yeah, I think you've
Getting
said it
past.
so well there, Anita, because, when you're in pause and you're trying to make something happen, I'm very passionate about this because I see people living like that, and it's like your life is actually passing you by and it's being stolen from you by infertility. Don't let infertility thieve that as well. Don't let it thieve your relationship. The fact that you've got to live well. I do it in a whimsical way. I use, rather than counseling, which is, talking and sharing your story, I use hypnotherapy, which allows you to use your subconscious mind, change your mindset, in actual fact, reframe. And that's a really important aspect, is the whole reframing of what's going on, who you are, your identity, your confidence as well, bringing back people's confidence in themselves, and the idea that you're living your life as well as you can, and you are ready to invite and to accept a small person into it, and that it's a good life to be part of, rather than when I have my child, I'll start living. Because you know so well, Anita, that people who do have their babies are at much higher risk of postnatal depression when they've had a delay, a wait, a struggle to go through. It's really unfair. It actually breaks my heart to see that. So I like to prep people in advance that having your baby means that you are now on the same page as everybody else. You're allowed to feel, as a lot of people do, as if you've been in a road traffic accident, at sea and overwhelmed. Your body's going through a lot of changes. It feels like a lot of drudgery. You're not getting any sleep. Like, it's a really, really tough time. And you don't have to be the perfect mother because you've had all of these challenges. You've got to mind yourself. You've got to get minded. You've got to recover, recuperate, rehabilitate. And it's called matrescence, learning to be a mother, and how you do it and how your baby, gels with your life as well. And I think, the sense that if I do the hard yards now, then it'll be okay. There's a lot of budgeting, the sense of I'll pay my dues now, or the feeling of, I think somebody described it so well, Anita. She said, it's like I'm being punished for a crime I didn't commit. It's like, why us? Why not us? We're not bad people. We're not wild drinkers. We're not doing anything that is mad. We work hard. We pay our taxes. We're as good to people as we can be. And that's something, it is the loveliest people in the world and the most appreciative, kind people who are hit with this. And, having to show up for baby showers, first birthday parties, all the different social events. I often think that it's like nailing on a mask and being very thrilled when yet you open Facebook or Instagram and it's another lovely announcement, and it's like, happy for you, but oh my God, heartbroken for me. And there's a lot of energy expended in trying to do normal, to be normal, and then feeling it's like, how can I be jealous of somebody else? That's not in my nature. And it's like, that's what fertility struggles do to you. That is not really you at all. That is just showing how much you want your baby. And it's you're not some evil, mad, sad person in the slightest. But so much of it is hidden. And I think, very tragically, Anita, your pregnancy losses, like, absolutely. There was a couple that I remember, and, I remember feeling like, in proxy, like this a stab of pain and the feeling of, oh no. I remember I walked up and down the stairs here 3 times to just unloosen. It was like a knot, and it was like, I shouldn't be feeling this. And it's like, it's Anita and it's Paul, and how absolutely horrific. The sense of, people not understanding about miscarriage, that, you're as pregnant when you get the first whisper of a positive pregnancy test as when you can't see your toes. And, you're immediately invested in this little pregnancy and you can't stop. You just can't stop that process. It is that love. And to have it withdrawn and people kind of going, oh, well, at least it was early, or sure, you have no problem getting pregnant. You know, the stuff that people say that doesn't recognize this loss, that you could go on to have 10 children, as my mother-in-law did, and she had 3 miscarriages. She always remembered those 3 that she lost. So, you know, we still have a lot of a lack of understanding of the torment, the devastation, the grief, and it's an ongoing loss, because you know what age or what stage your little ones should be at now. You
Yeah.
know, it's always with you. And you see other people who are pregnant around the same time. You see their child, you know, whatever they're doing, and it's like, that should have been us. That could have been us. And it hurts and hurts and hurts and continues to hurt. And, you
Well,
know,
I will say I never thought I'd reach 50 and be childless, but I am a mother in other ways. But it does get easier for anyone, because I remember in my 30s, I couldn't imagine my life without children or getting to 50. And I'm here now. And it's just to give hope to people as well. Like, life goes on as long as you've if you've good relationships around and good people. Like, I had you that was coaching me, and even when I'd say my bloods are dropping, it's looking like another miscarriage, and coaching me through it to get me into the hospital, you know, to do the final scans, I suppose. And, you know, being told there's no heartbeat. And I couldn't have done that without a good circle, good people around me. And that built me up over the years after it as well. And
it's very important to address the emotional, you know, at the EMDR I did with you, because that trauma can become lodged. And, you know, for you, the way you have grown, developed, and still, you know, you're so you haven't been defined or diminished by it. And that's very courageous and tough. And that was hard work that you did. You put in the effort, because you know what you have going on now. The work you do is incredible. And the spotlights you shine on so many different issues that nobody else will address. And the generosity that you show, the circle of friends that you have, the people you know, you really are vibrantly living a meaningful life, part of your community, the broader community, the online community as well. You've never shirked from being part of that. You've never diminished yourself in that way. And, you know, carving out your place and proudly inhabiting it. You know, I really think that is amazing, because it can be, when you've very little energy and you're exhausted, it can be easy to succumb and to just be diminished. So, you know, I applaud you. And as you know, I love and enjoy you and celebrate you. So thanks for all that you do, and for letting people know that, you know, healing time, grieving time.
And I think it's important, because we carry a loss of, I suppose we start off with loss. And then that loss is carried through, whether it's not happening every month or you have a pregnancy loss. And I suppose just keep them going and look after yourself, look after your mental health. And it's the little things. If it's getting that ice cream out of the fridge that night, it's just the little things. And I always concentrated on the small things, the little wins, not the big ones. If things had been different, maybe I wouldn't be the woman I am today. I'll never know. But I just know I'm on this path now, and I want to raise awareness for people, raise awareness in workplaces. Like, the woman beside you, you don't know what they're going through. I was very lucky. I was self-employed anyway, and my customers were amazing if I had to take time off after a loss. I have seen women go back to work after doing egg retrieval, and I don't know how they did, because it's terribly uncomfortable. I've seen them go back. I'd be sitting with them, and they would be going back to a job, and I don't know how they did it.
I've seen GPs going back to do surgeries after having a DNC or having a transfer. And it's like, you know something, I know the guilt factor. Women hate letting down their colleagues or their clients or students. You know, it really is, it's a tough one, but it's the only time in your life you need a little bit of healing. And, you know, we call it convalescence. And I think, you know, the regrets I hear people saying is, I wish I'd taken more time off. I thought it'd be better going back, because I'd be back at work and I wouldn't be thinking of it. But it actually doesn't pan out like that, does it?
No. And I think it's important, because we carry a loss of, I suppose we start off with loss. And then that loss is carried through, whether it's not happening every month or you're you have a pregnancy loss. And I suppose just keep them going and look after yourself, look after your mental health. And it's the little things. And I always concentrated on the small things, the little wins, not the big ones. If things had been different, maybe I wouldn't be the woman I am today. I'll never know. But I just know I'm on this path now, and I want to raise awareness for people, raise awareness in workplaces. Like, the woman beside you, you don't know what they're going through. And I suppose just keep them going and look after yourself, look after your mental health. And it's the little things. And I always concentrated on the small things, the little wins, not the big ones. If things had been different, maybe I wouldn't be the woman I am today. I'll never know. And it's important that this is your time. Like we've seen COVID, if COVID has taught us anything, is that, things can come to a standstill and life goes on as well, and you will be replaced. But this is your time and you're not getting this time back. So, like, sit into the grief and then you're ready and get your body ready for the next time.
And your
Or
mind, because
next
otherwise,
cycle.
yeah, that's a really good point. To do the physical healing, A, from a pregnancy, B, from, the actual miscarriage, and if there's been a D&C, all of that. But the emotional and mental, the trauma, because otherwise going into another cycle or another pregnancy, there can be a hangover effect. And that depression, it's kind of like really making sure you honor that little one fully and completely. Then, the fear that people have is that you're highly fertile after a miscarriage, so you've got to rush in and get pregnant or do your treatment again. That pressure that women face is massive, and it's not totally accurate. It's actually coming from the idea that you don't have to wait 6 months anymore. But online, there is a thing, you're hyper fertile, and it's like, actually, your say your liver stores are depleted because you have been pregnant. So it's like, take that time, because you are the most important person. You are the CEO of your family, I always say. And if you're healthy in your mind and your body, you're in a better place to hopefully have better results or make better decisions and not be led down blind alleys or
I did that.
forced
I
into
rushed
things.
into the next one. You're like, when will it happen again? And then when it doesn't, the expectations, and it was managing expectations. It's really vital that you manage the expectations and that you enjoy it as well. That you enjoy, it's hard to use that word joy or enjoy on the journey, but you have to enjoy each other and you have to make time for each other, and it's not hospital visits. And it's
Okay.
important that couples, this isn't a lecture on how you manage your relationship, but it was one thing that we did well, I think, was the going out for the dinners, the traveling, the nice things that we did, and the small things that we did within the home, whether it was a movie night and it was creating a nice home, that it was always going to be a home with or without children. That we had that, and we had our circle of friends, and it was a home for everybody to come into. It was important for us as well.
I think that's absolutely so true. That, sometimes it's a feeling that this home is not
Not a
fully
home unless it's with
established,
children.
unless it's, and until we have children, we can't actually. Whereas, I think your home is quite famous for being the most wonderful, nurturing space and loveliness, and place of really great quality sleep, much laughter, wonderful books, great food, all of that. And, recently, actually, Anita, someone said that she and her other half, they've now started having dinner at the table and laying the table nicely. She said, it's really nice. We're not doing it every night, but it's actually lovely that we don't. And of course, now even more pronounced is the use of devices. Everybody is constantly flicking on phones all the time. And, this person has made a decision, herself and other half, there's no devices at the table. It's time we chat and we catch up and we have a laugh. Actually, it's a tiny thing, but it's lovely.
Yeah.
And fully, I call it like colonizing your space, your home, that it is as comfortable, beautiful, lovely, because again, like other guests, you're kind of ready to invite kids, or they see, oh, that's a lovely space. It's opening it up. It's living well while preparing, hopefully, for pregnancy. And
Yeah, I think that's the key. It's living well. It's absolutely living well throughout all of your life as you move it through the world. It's your home, it's your work environment. It's making sure that it's safe, and it's safe. It's safe enough for you to talk. You are entitled to get pregnant. You are entitled to want a baby, and to feel safe that you can talk about it. And I think that I've seen down through the years where women are afraid to talk about it in case they lose their job or they miss out on that promotion. And if we started flipping that on its head and we treated the men like that, where they'd be afraid to talk about it because they're able to go in, and like my husband was never afraid to talk about it if we were doing anything, because he wasn't afraid he wouldn't miss out on a promotion. And I think that's the heavy
Yeah, and
weight on women
it's
that have
very
built
true now.
careers.
That is, I think, actually, although now, I mean, I'm invited to do corporate talks, fertility at work, fertility matters, and they have fertility policies. And on paper, they're lovely. They really are lovely.
Everything is great
But
on paper, these policies, until you
yeah,
have to actually put them into practice.
going to HR and, the sense of you're opening up. And if your other half works in the same company, that's, you're also a spotlight, you're sharing information. It's very sensitive, very personal, you're very vulnerable. And the fact that the judgment of, oh my goodness me, she's planning a pregnancy, so she's going to be leaving at some stage and having maternity leave. Or the sense of, the other thing that people don't realize is that with fertility treatment, it isn't a silver bullet that, oh, she's doing IVF, so that's going to be 6 weeks out of her life and that's grand. It's like, no, it could be, somebody could be doing 6, 8, 10 years and years, and shifting and changing and going abroad and doing, all the different combinations and permutations that, the kind of eye roll, like, you're still doing it, or did it not work? And it's like, this is the normality. So I think, you were saying with COVID, there were far fewer premature births, preterm deliveries, because women were at
See those
home.
statistics.
I don't know where that study is. I should be able to quote it. I'm not, because I loved it. And it's the fact, an awful lot of women now aren't taking their maternity leave the month before they are due to deliver, because they work right up and it's like, I'll have it at the other end, or I want to finish up, or term isn't over, or whatever it is. And it's like, women actually work extremely well from home with the leeway of kind of, minding the house, getting stuff done, a nip in and a nip out, not having to account for every moment, but working so diligently, so productively, and so well. And, it's very much the American thing.
And
Mind
minus that commute, because if you're getting into a car, you're dropping children. Because when we bought our house here 23 years ago, people in our development were like putting their children in to a car at 6:30 in the morning. It's dark. They're collecting them when it's dark, and then they're ready for bed in pajamas. And that has its toll. That
absolutely
has its toll. The commute, grabbing the children, running out with them, dropping them to creche, trying
and
to.
it's all about times. And the other thing is that, trying to have a second or a third child, and, a creche is great and wonderful and super, but you have to be there at a certain time so that you can get into work yourself. If you're using public transport in Ireland, which is just ridiculous anyway, getting the trains are delayed or overcrowded, can't get a seat. And the other thing is, picking them up on time. And invariably, creches breed incredibly fabulous diseases. So there's a call. We've got, chicken pox this week. We've got some weird RSV. We've got whatever infection is happening. Creches can close, and you're left with, the fear and the worry. Is somebody staying at home? Am I taking annual leave? Am I going to try and pinch it? Will somebody be able to mind this child? Who's available? There is no village, no tribe. You've got to assemble anybody who is remotely helpful yourself. And women do bear the mental load from, the whole thing of fertility. What's our plan? What are we doing? When's the next cycle? Who's the best doctor? Should we change? All of these decisions. How do we mind kids? How do we live? How do we enjoy our kids while we're trying to conceive another one? How do we manage when we've had a very tragic pregnancy loss, and, so-and-so is going to a birthday party, and, kind of keep doing Christmas, keeping the normality. And I think women bear that mental load. Guys are great, and guys can be on the same page, and it's marvelous. And a lot of men nowadays, oh, you are so lucky. Guys who can cook and don't mind shopping. That has been a change. But, the fact that women working is not a choice or a luxury. It's a basic necessity. And, the cost of a mortgage, trying to get a mortgage, even just the basic cost of living. Everything is really, it's so tough. and the cost of fertility on top of that. So I guess I like to help people with the idea of making good choices, of having, the sense of how long do we continue this for? What decisions do we make? What are we prepared to do? How do we live our lives while we're doing this? So that's a very important, part of the fertility coaching, along with the kind of the mindset, the trauma. So there's the therapy angle and there's the practical guidance, trying to simplify it based on the patterns that I see and helping people to remain as themselves and not to feel that they are lesser because they
Yes.
don't actually have children or that
That's
their house
so
isn't
important.
filled.
Thank you for tuning in to the Femcast. If you're enjoying the podcast, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and become part of our growing community. By subscribing, you're helping us bring important stories to the forefront and giving us the opportunity to book incredible guests who share their powerful insights. Your support means everything to us. It helps us continue the research, amplifying these vital voices and delivering the best content possible. Feeling generous? You can even buy me a coffee to fuel the work we're doing here. Together, we can keep this movement alive and thriving. So let's keep the conversation going, amplify these voices, and make a difference. We're in this with you. This is the Femcast. I suppose women carry the mental load. In our time, I know they're kind of, what would you call it, front loading the fertility now, as in checking the men out, the DNA fragmentation, all of that is done early, whereas our investigations didn't start till after the fourth miscarriage because here they don't do that. And there was no way of doing it. You didn't do it privately back then, but now I see all clinics are doing it. And you can go and have all of this done early. The women carrying the load from, the blood tests, the examinations, has she got polycystic ovaries, endometriosis. So it's factored heavily on the woman rather than the man when it's 50%.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. It
Mm.
has shifted slightly, but the whole sense you have women, they're doing fertility diets, fertility cleanses, they're, eating a very restricted diet, they're pulling back from exercising, they are minding everything. While a guy might be still having the pints, he might be still doing triathlons, he might be, just the sense of it is predicated on the woman's body, whereas obviously the sperm DNA is 50% of the equation. And in fact, things like preeclampsia, preterm labor, that's all predicated from the male aspect. So it's really, it's massively important to have a guy in the best of health, to be eating well, sleeping well, getting daylight, to have enough exercise, not too much exercise, not sitting in, heated car seats. All of those things make a vast difference. And,
Huge.
I'll hear people say, oh, we're doing IVF, so it doesn't really matter. And it's like, yes, it does, because
You're still using his sperm.
exactly, there's, and, or somebody saying, well, I'm doing donor sperm, so that gives me better chance. It's like, well, perhaps, maybe, but you still need to be in, the best of health and wellness. And women, I think it is because of all of the appointments, the choosing of clinics, the, being, were you on the forums? Were you down rabbit holes of research? Were you every night being
I
Facebook
went
groups?
on a forum once and it was just so overwhelming. It was just too much that I came off it. And then, of course, I was lucky enough. After that, I met yourself and Dr. Phil Boyle. So that was good, just, optimizing my health and learning about my body. Like I was nearly 40 before. We're not taught early what our body can do, what it can't do, what happens, how to monitor our cycle every month from the discharge, how flexible it is, right up to period, the colour of the period, right down to the discharge at the end and coming up to ovulation. So that was huge learning, because when you're in the clinics, they just go bang straight for the internal investigations and get you on this now. And then that becomes conveyor belt work rather than learning about your body, the whole living well through it that you taught.
Yeah.
taught
Yeah,
us.
it
Well,
is.
and if we could go back to, actually, Helena, I cut you off there. If we could go back to how you're helping women live well,
I guess
being
it's
at that
really, the sense of,
unit.
I almost see it like an audit where somebody is and what's going on for them. So the great thing using, EMDR is a tool for trauma that is really brief. So it's addressing the trauma of not being pregnant, not having a child, having pregnancy loss. Those all need to be addressed. The fact of
Just for 1 second, people never called it trauma before, but it absolutely is.
it's trauma.
Absolutely.
And
If you woke up one morning, God forbid, and you're walking, going about your day like we normally go about our day, we're not met with a disaster. But then you get the news, you're going to have fertility problems, and now you're on this journey. That is huge.
it's devastating. And someone discovering that they need to go and have an investigation for endometriosis, which is surgery, it's anesthesia, it's staying in hospital. And then to be hit with a sense of, well, all the IVF you've done over the last 3 years or everything you've done, you could never have got pregnant and carried a baby. The shock, the devastation, and
Don't do
this
that
feeling,
first.
the feeling of betrayal. So I guess, helping people to come to terms with needing these investigations, with the results the investigations throw up, and dealing with the fact that it could, should, ought have been done far, far, far sooner, leaving no stone unturned. I'm helping people, with the questions to ask, to give them that empowerment, and then helping with the reframing of their fertility journey. It's like, right, okay, so you're basically only starting now. So how does it look? What is the best way to literally move forward into this so that there's no feeling of resentfulness that could, psychologically impact anything else and add to this. But dealing with the trauma actually is first. So with hypnotherapy, it's like it speeds everything up because you're doing it in your mind, you're connecting with your subconscious mind. So it's not a lot of talk. It's really simple, really direct. So I only see people, it's actually called brief therapy very intelligently. And I might see somebody 6, 8, 10 sessions. So it's actually quite little. And the shifts and the changes and be saying, I wish I'd known about this, or I didn't think I was traumatized. I thought I was doing fine. I didn't realize how bad I felt or how tough it actually was. So it's a validation. It's being able to open up safely. It's being able to be understood. I mean, because I'm a midwife, I know all the procedures. I know, how to help people recover from surgery, to recover after miscarriage, the physicality of it all. And so I guess, bringing all those strands together quickly, neatly, directly, and often quite bluntly with people can be very refreshing. And
Yeah.
it's like you don't have to spend ages.
I will say that during my investigations, you were marvelous. I had the endometriosis at the end as well. Now, luckily, I didn't have it, but I was thinking, gosh, we're at the end of it now. It was just bizarre. And that was down to Dr. Boyle sending me to make sure everything was good and working. And it was really good to have all those investigations anyway for going through the rest of my cycles and menopause now as I'm going through. So that was all really good. The coaching was fantastic because after investigations, endometriosis investigation, like you helped me, you got me to heal my body and my mind going through the next phase. And I suppose my miscarriages as well, helping me heal and taking that time to heal. And not doing what I did in the earlier miscarriages was like, having to bounce back really quickly. And I'm resilient, so I'll bounce back and not giving my body time to heal and catch up. And then the rest of me, because again, you're always thinking about when I have to do it now. I'm really fertile. That's one thing when you mentioned earlier going down a rabbit hole is those forums go, oh yeah, you're really fertile. I heard you're really fertile. And I know someone that got pregnant straight away. Now that may happen for 1 or 2 people. It doesn't happen for everybody. And that's worth noting that not everybody is the same as in everybody. Our bodies are different. So give yourself that time to heal after a failed cycle, heal after a miscarriage, heal after investigations. And I suppose the men in the situation feels helpless as well, because I know Paul did when we were having miscarriages, like not knowing what to do. And there isn't a whole lot they can do, but they are forgotten about as well, in that people say, well, how is she? I think it's more now, there's more awareness around men, thankfully, that we say, how are you?
That has shifted. Yeah, because, I'll hear guys saying, it's a disenfranchised grief. I didn't kind of feel like it wasn't my body, but I was amazed at how bad I felt or how it hit me. And it was like, I was meant to be strong. I was meant to be. And there's this kind of feeling, the sense of the blueprint, I should be and I ought to be. And it's like, no, the two of you are bruised and battered and bewildered. And, you're knocked sideways by this. Now, the other side of the coin is, for some people, it does happen that a miscarriage just is a thing and it's gone and they're quite surprised or they just do feel okay. But for 1 in 4 people, at least, there is that trauma that it becomes, PTSD. It's serious. It's actually awful. So as you said there, I think very much that how you respond, it's about learning about yourself. This is me. It's, I'm not bad. It's uncomfortable. I need to deal with it. I need to take my time to deal with it in my way or whatever suits me. I am the center of this. I know my own needs and I get them met. I'm allowed to. I'm worthy. I love that tagline. L'Oreal.
Yeah.
It used to go, because I'm worth it.
Absolutely.
Because you're here on this planet, because you were born, because you breathe. Yes, you're absolutely worth it. And, to kind of hold on to that, even when things seem so bad. And to include the guys, they're often sidelined and they are, kind of nodding when doctors are saying things, taking information. They're meant to be overseeing. A lot of them get, the role of the cost accountant. They're paying the bills, they're gathering money, that they're put into that role because they feel, well, it's something practical I can do. So I guess it's about sharing it. And as you said there, talking, but not having it as your whole conversation all day long or all weekend long.
No.
That there's, that it's like an agenda.
Yeah. And I think it's important, because I didn't do this early on, is naming it when you feel sad or when you feel frustrated or when you feel, when will it be my turn, or I have an ache. Because I was in the hospital at one point and like one of the doctors said to me, like, when is enough enough? And I remember going, oh my God. And I was saying, when you can take that piece of me that wants this, that can stop that longing, when you can remove that piece of me, I won't be seen here again. But I just had that longing and I could smell it. I was waking up and I could smell baby. Now, I love the smell of babies. It felt really real to me. My life has moved on. I'm healthy-ish, happy. I'm going through menopause now. Very content. And you're facing into that as well as you go on in your bodies. And that's another episode we'll talk about. But for now, we just want the living well while you're working, while you're going through all this. And I suppose to respect those feelings, listen to your body and name them and validate them.
That's so important. I think, you, again, work occupies a lot of our time.
Mhm.
And, even if it's a line manager who happens to be helpful or colleagues, to kind of finding the allies, making the ease. Sometimes people now, that's been a major shift, Anita. People being surprised at how many senior people have been through what they've been through and how understanding they can be. That there is a shift. And all of these conversations are helping so much to open it up, that you cannot, work-wise. I mean, I remember having, back in the day, say 10 years ago, women getting up at 4 a.m. to get a first appointment in a clinic in Dublin to get back to the classroom by 9 o'clock. Absolutely exhausting, frazzled by it all. And now an awful lot of principals are very understanding, and the sense of you don't need to tell anybody, but tell, I will mind you or help you or ease, because, it's often not an awful lot. It's actually 9 visits per IVF cycle. So when you think of it, it's an incredibly short time, but because you can't predict it, depending on how you respond, how many eggs will mature, the timing of the retrievals, all of that, that it's really hard. Will you appear at this meeting? Will you be able to go to whatever? And the uncertainty is just so difficult. But work should be able to manage it. And sometimes without a big palaver, that it's kind of, full front, and that, it is lovely. And you said something very poignant, that, going through for so long, that you couldn't expect Paul to be taking time off work, and how often you were on your own. I mean, that is a huge aspect. Getting up, getting to the clinic, getting parked, going in, saying hi to people, and you're on your own. And you might be seeing, other couples draped around the place. Nobody talks to each other. It's incredibly lonely and tough. And you've got to ask the questions. You've got to try and hear the answers in a very short time, extrapolate the information, and not forget anything. So, all of that to manage, is really, really tough. And I think to see that companies, small companies, corporates, institutions, semi-state bodies and schools are beginning to acknowledge this reality in people's lives is
And not just
refreshing.
the clinic visits, it's the medication as well is so hard on their bodies. It's absolutely so, so hard. And the tiredness, and, when they're ramping up those hormones, it's just horrendous. And the slightest thing will just tip you over the edge, and you're trying to keep going, bury it. And it has to go somewhere, so it stays in your body. And that you are treating people for trauma. But the medications are so hard. And if you know of anybody that's on these medications, please, please, please go gently with them.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because
it's so
back in the day, I mean, I still say to people who need it that back in the day, when you were going through IVF, you were in hospital. You were in a clinic. You were being fed and minded. You were going for walks in the garden. You weren't expected to work, appear to anybody. Obviously, it was majorly convenient being off-site for so long. So you really, treating yourself gently, other people being cognizant of the fact that you're not going to be showing up for get-togethers. And it's like, do you know what? There'll be other ones. And not to be pressuring people. The other thing actually on that point is, what was it like for you? You said you did quite a lot. You were saying that your first 3 pregnancy losses, that it was only after that you started telling people. Did you find that people were either, very helpful and caring, or that they were intrusive? What was that like? What was your kind of team? What would you advise people?
Back then, Paul was very private about it, whereas I wanted to talk about it because people weren't talking about it, and I need to talk about it. This is the way I felt. And then I was in hospital for a bit longer. I can't remember anyway, but we just started telling people. Or people would say, well, when are you going to go? And I'd say, well, I've already had a few pregnancy losses. And they're like, oh, are you going to try IVF? And I tried everything. I can get pregnant on my own. I tried IUI, I tried IVF. I just can't hold on to pregnancies. So the IVF was to get the best quality eggs that the best are going in there. And then I'd get to a certain stage and just lose it. But people were at a loss, I suppose, and it wasn't spoken about that much. So you're going back, I started at 30, I'm 52 now. I suppose I had my first pregnancy loss at 31, right up into my 40s. So they were at a loss. There was I'm really sorry. I don't really know what to say to you. Some people were like, oh, it'll happen the next time. It's like, when somebody, I don't know, grief of any type, people don't know what to say. The people that do know how it feels know, but it's just to go gently. And sometimes we say the wrong things. I've done it. When I was trying to get pregnant, and I know a girl that I remember saying, at least you can get pregnant. It just came out because I was just so dying I just wanted to be pregnant and to know that my body was working for me. But I've said stuff and like it haunts me. It absolutely haunts me today. And I've said it to that girl and she goes, like, it's a natural thing to say. And I went, oh my God, it was so insensitive. But I was just so desperate. I wanted to be pregnant or to know that I could get pregnant. And she had been suffering the same where she was getting pregnant and not holding on to it. And she says, but they're at a loss as to how I'm going to have one as well. I suppose it's just to be mindful that the hospitals are busy as well. So you're going from a fertility clinic to a public hospital and they're very busy. And you've been minded up to a point and you've been through the private system. So you're not hours waiting and then you're going into a busy A&E in a maternity hospital because you're bleeding or you have pain and something doesn't feel right. So you have to be mindful. It is a long time. It's frustrating. They're really busy and understaffed, under-resourced. So I remember being really resentful because of things that were said to me from medical people. But I understand they're frustrated and they're so understaffed and under-resourced. Now, I remember coming out one day and saying, oh, it's not their fault. And Paul was saying to me, we should be like the first person they've seen today. But I've made excuses, I suppose, but you have to, your expectations as well in going from I suppose you would call it a gentleness of a clinic to a mad AME in maternity.
Yeah.
If you are needing to see somebody in a hurry.
That's a really good point
that's
because
it's
a huge difference.
Massive,
It's a huge
massive
difference.
difference.
Yeah.
That's one that stood out for me. Like if there was somewhere where clinics could bring you right up to having the baby, that would be
the interface doesn't exist.
No.
It's a really weird, or over a weekend, and the clinic is like, well, no, just go to A&E, and it's it's.
And these
I must say,
maternity hospitals are hammered out, but they are so busy, so busy. And then
sadly, there has been a shift.
6-week checkup, after you've had a pregnancy loss, and you're sitting in the queue, but you're sitting with people who are early pregnancy, later on in pregnancy. We're all there together.
Yeah,
in different clinics because it's a maternity hospital, and it's quite upsetting.
It's very triggering and very difficult. I mean, that still is an issue. Certainly the major maternity hospitals, there really has been a shift with bereavement midwives, with, investigations into miscarriage, and University College Cork doing massive work on it. Like there really has been a good shift. And, we had Sheila Shuggis there, I thought the Channel 4, not Channel 4, TG Cahir
I remember
documentary, which really, showed what is shifting, what is changing. And I can see that happening, that people are getting better care. There's still the odd, just hurtful questions and assumptions and lack of understanding. But that is one area that is improving, Anita. I mean, not before time, but I'm so relieved to see that. I'm hearing it consistently and getting, now you don't have to wait for the 3. You pushed for that. You did so much work on that people are now getting investigated far, far sooner. That's a big change. So,
are they getting investigated sooner in public hospitals or private? They are. Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of shifts. So everything you've done, you may not even be aware of it, but it does. Having those conversations out there, advocating, you have been, like a dripping tap, and it really does pay off, and it does encourage, and it gives people, the sense of asking. And, as Paul said, everybody should be treated as an individual, as the first person. That was the first lesson I actually got on the first day of nursing. You are to treat every single person you come in contact as if it is your own relative there, and that nothing else matters, that you're just seeing them and you're just, responding. Now, with the best will in the world, not always possible, but, it really is so important to be treated with care and, to be guided. It's so strange.
Yeah, it's just that when you go into these clinics, that reminded me, when you go into the clinics and no one is talking, it's really quiet. It's like they'll come out and they'll nearly whisper your name, and you'll go in and and then you'll leave. There's no kind of chat. But if you have any problems, you're going to this maternity hospital. It's bustling, it's busy. There's people running around everywhere. There's different clinics going on, and you have to remember, like, you have to prepare for that. Not everybody
It's
has
very
to prepare
shocking.
to it.
It's
But you have
it
to
can be
prepare.
shocking.
Yeah,
And nobody wants to, even talking about miscarriage, I find there's a feeling of, I don't want to jinx my chances by not being positive enough,
yeah,
by even thinking that a cycle will fail, that my period will come, that
yeah.
it won't work. If I've got to keep on this, kind of American hyper positivity cheerleading thing. And it's like, that's just exhausting and unrealistic. I always say, being like a grumpy teen, it's like, okay, yeah, grand, chewing gum is actually a fine mindset to have as well. Yet, I have no wish for anyone I love the idea, and it really gives me great satisfaction helping someone into another pregnancy, if you will,
Yeah.
that they don't feel, until I have my sneaky 7-week scan, until I have my 8.5-week scan, until I have my 12-week scan, until I have my anatomy scan, I'm not going to invest. I cannot enjoy this. That's a theft.
I would say enjoy it. Absolutely enjoy it. And if I had my time back again, I would, even for the few weeks, I wish I didn't have that anxiety and that feeling of, checking yourself every time you went to the toilet. Just go to the bathroom, come out, but hindsight's great. I wish I would say just enjoy it. The minute you see the blue lines, just celebrate it. For the 9 months every day, or for the 6 weeks or 9 weeks or 12 weeks, just enjoy it. And it's not easy. I know it's not easy. And early pregnancy and period pains, menstrual cycles are the same in your period. So you're like, oh my God.
Every single, every
period.
bit of wind or every sensation is like, oh my God. So that is something I really do help with, to ease that. And that's the great thing with hypnosis, that it really does help enormously. And, I guess for people, there's, the kind of like tunnel vision, I just have to keep going, on my own, to reach out and get some support, to get some help briefly and neatly, and not to feel so incredibly alone or different. And
I think that's important, that they live well, not feel different. Not everybody works the same. Not every brain works the same. Not every body works the same. And it's a little different, and sometimes it needs tweaking, but just to live well and enjoy every day and be present.
And you are,
so hard when you're going through it.
And I'm so grateful to you, Anita. You have never shied away from sharing your story, from addressing the really traumatic and tragic elements of it and helping others. And, that's what has, something that I had been avoiding for a long time, was starting a podcast. So even for you,
congratulations! I'm so happy that people.
Thank you. Giving me the title for it. So what should I call it, Anita? Because and you're very creative and absolutely on point. So thank you for that, because I did
Helena's
feel
podcast, by the way, is going to be called Reframing Fertility.
And again, Anita obviously will be on an episode of it, and it's personal insights, expert advice, emotional support, and it's going from the sort of preconception, all of those issues, to secondary infertility, to
secondary is big. And I think just, if we can briefly just touch on secondary infertility, couples that have already had, men, women, couples that have had a baby, and then they want another baby and they can't have a baby. It is so frustrating and hard for them, and that people need
and it's
to be mindful
very
around
inventable, because the sense of, well, obviously, be grateful for what you have, and it's like, of course, but we know the love we have for this child, and
there's more children. They shouldn't. not want to say, well, I want more children.
Nature is, actually, I'll tell you, a French midwife once said to me when I was a very young student midwife, and she was quite ancient. She was really old. She was about 32, right? A child, obviously. But she said that it's harder not to have a second child sometimes than not to have a first. And I was like, what? Years later, I developed an understanding of it. And actually, I know somebody who has 7 amazing children. And she is a very, very switched on, wonderful woman that I love. And she said, Helena, we would have loved another one. Ridiculous. We couldn't possibly. And I mean, people think we're mad and lunatic as it is. We adore our children. But to have a child and to have become pregnant easily and find yourself in the position, it's not happening. You've now got to go down, an restorative reproductive medicine route. You've got to go down having investigations, medications, or you've got to go and do IVF. It's really shocking. And again, very, very traumatic. And people are looking and it's like, well, you had no problem first time. What's wrong with you now?
And
it's
just
like,
be mindful of the conversation we had earlier. Just be mindful. Just because they have one there, if they want 21, they can do that. But just be mindful that.
And those, that question.
Child.
And again, as you really have explained so clearly, you really do that so well, Anita, that having, the money, setting up the clinic visits, going through the protocols, having your fertility treatment, all of those with a child already in situ, to realize that the potential age gap is there's another birthday, Santa Claus again another year, and the sense of, what will it be like when we do? Are we starting afresh? If there's a 5-year gap, what does that mean for us? That there's a lot of heartbreak in secondary fertility issues. I don't like the word infertility. I like subfertility or fertility issues. And I think there is still so much that we don't know that's not investigated yet. And I think owning the blame, or people, and you said earlier, something along the lines of, I can't hold on to a pregnancy. And, the sense that quite a lot of times we forget that it's the genetic makeup, that a pregnancy that cannot continue. And it is not something like an inhospitable womb, or the sense of you're suddenly losing the plot and it's like, oh, whoops, I lost my brolly yesterday, I lost a baby today. It is not like that. There is no control. There may be issues, but quite a lot of the time, there is so little that is known about why a little pregnancy will not continue. So even the sense of feeling your body has let you down is erroneous as well. So bear that in mind.
Yeah. Language is very, very important. I have to reframe that now, Helena.
And it's somebody to see Dolly here as well.
Yeah, Dolly has just joined us. I would like to thank you for today, and hopefully we can help the women in the workplace and the men that are going through it, and just, I suppose, living well with.
And we must remember solo mums. I'm seeing far more solo mums.
Lovely, beautiful.
Women who decide, whatever relations have been or have not been, in the sense of, I'm going for this. And clinics, you self-refer. There is no judgment. Yes, you may just use IUI with your donor sperm, or you may need to go on to IVF. But having your setup in place, however you manage it, it's really great to see it. It's such, it's such a freedom. It's such an openness.
I love it.
I'm delighted to be part of it.
I actually must get some women on to talk about that.
Oh, do. Anita, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much, Helena. And just say to our listeners, just go gently.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Femcast. We hope it has helped shed light on the critical issues affecting us today. If you or someone you know has experienced anything discussed in this episode, please log on to our website, thefemcast.com, for support services and help. Don't forget to subscribe, rate and review our podcast to help us continue bringing these important conversations to the forefront. Join us next time for more inspiring stories and empowering discussions. Stay strong, stay informed, and stay connected. This is the Femcast.